Okay. Um, Hi, Alyse. I'm so happy to talk with you. I'm really glad that you're here. So
Thanks,
I'm
Miranda.
I'm Miranda Meyerson. I'm the founder of Meyerson Education Services, and we're a team of academic coaches who work with students kindergarten through college, really and beyond, on executive functioning skills and sort of core academics. And as we know, we're all building sort of up to college and career success. And I'm really excited that you're here, and I'm excited to introduce you. This is Alyse Levine of Premium Prep. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much, Miranda, for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and share this conversation together. So thank you. Yeah, a little bit about myself. So I've been running Premium Prep for over 20 years. We are a private college counseling company. We are a team of over 20 counselors and over 20 writing specialists. I oversee and run the company. I started my career in college admissions at Washington University in St. Louis, and then moved over to the college counseling side at two wonderful private schools. First, the Dwight Englewood School, and then the Dalton School in Manhattan. So, kind of moved from my background in admissions at WashU, which is my alma mater, moved literally back home to the East Coast, to the New York area, and started my career in college counseling. Then, when my family relocated to North Carolina, my husband's career brought us here. I really built out Premium Prep, and it's been wonderful to run this company with an incredible team. And I'd say the one thing that really sets us apart is that we are all former school counselors. Some of us actually still work in schools as well. But we really prioritize that school counseling experience as the most important training to really know how to do this work. We are career professionals, not people who are doing this late stage career, but people who have made this our life's work.
That sounds fantastic, and that really sets you up well to really give students and families exactly what they need. And I know that your company reached out to us a little while ago to set up a partnership, and I think that we're really aligned in that we feel that our staff need to be career educators. So all of our teachers also come from schools, have advanced degrees, lots of classroom experience, lots of experience talking with families, so that we can be confident that we're really giving everybody exactly what they need.
I agree. I love that about your team. And I think it's what drew us to you initially. And then meeting you, it was obvious that our values were aligned and that sort of kindred spirit in how we approach the work that we do.
Totally. So I'm gonna jump right in because I know our families are anxious to know sort of more about the college application process. But why don't we talk about this concept of success?
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
we talk about success as in helping students create lasting and transferable academic growth, um, helping students better understand how they learn, and decrease stress for the families. So we'd love to hear about how you sort of gauge success, what success at Premium Prep looks like, and like what does success look like for a family?
Absolutely. Success is important in this process. There's obviously an end goal, and we care about that end goal. We understand that families are going through this process with a lot of hopes and dreams on the line. So we don't diminish that. We obviously also want the journey along the way to be enjoyable and successful and as stress-free as possible. Um, we obviously can't eliminate the stress completely. I think the stakes are high. Students are putting themselves out there, and it can feel vulnerable and scary to be judged, evaluated, and frankly, getting ready to take the plunge into adulthood and independence. One of the really important metrics for us is the match. So the first part of the match is matching the counselors with the students. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, making sure that our counselors are really the best fit for each student. So we put a lot of time and attention into that. And then obviously finding those best fit colleges for the student. So spending a lot of time getting to know the students, getting to know their priorities, their values, what they're looking for in a school. We use a variety of inventories to begin that discussion and then produce a preliminary college list and help the students with how to research, explore those schools, and then adjust the list over time. So it's very much a dynamic list. It is not a this is set in stone and we cannot in any way change it. It is something that is in flux pretty much until around now, when things get a bit more serious for seniors and the list becomes more final. In terms of outcomes, we understand that parents matter. Parents care about that, and students care about that too. So we do use some data points to help students and families understand what our success rate looks like. 94% of our students get into one of their top 3 schools. And it's about 4 times, our students' admit rate is about 4 times the national average admit rates. And we do have some specific data to show that. That is on our website and in the materials we share with families. Again, we really measure success both in terms of the match, the journey, finding those schools where students are going to be most successful, but we also understand that the end result of where they go and the outcome is important and matters.
Awesome. Thank you. And so I love the sort of the flexibility and the personalization in the process. That seems incredibly important. Um, and we know that nobody sort of gets to college and reaches that point on their own without the support of their family. Um, so we often work with parents and teachers and doctors and like an entire student support team. So can you tell us how Premium Prep sort of engages the family and potential other people in the application process?
Absolutely. It definitely is. We believe in it takes a village. This is not just a process with us and the student. We believe that the parents should be involved. We use the metaphor of the students in the driver's seat and the parents, the counselor, and other participants who are part of the support network are there to support the student in this process. But we do believe that it should be student-centered and student-driven. So we have particular ways in which we are communicating and sending summaries after every interaction to students and parents, so parents are always informed. And we have specific junctures where we ask parents to join us in meetings where we are communicating deliverables that are very important, like that first preliminary college list, like our strategic report. Similarly, we ask that parents weigh in at 3 critical junctures with essays so that we are getting their input. But we also have some boundaries so that the student can feel that ownership of the process, talk to us comfortably and confidently without feeling like there's too many cooks in the kitchen. We
Mhm.
partner a lot with folks like you, Miranda, and people on your team. We really see the benefit of executive functioning coaches in this process. And so there's lots of ways that we can and do partner. We sometimes partner with school counselors because of our background as educators. There is a lot of respect from the high school counseling community to our team. And so very often there is a lot of openness and collaboration. Other times the family really prefers not to share that they are working with someone privately. And so we honor that. We honor what the student and the family feel is best. There are definitely high schools that we have a very open dialogue and relationship with, and they appreciate what we're doing and we appreciate what they're doing. And I think because all of us have been school counselors, we just have so much respect for what they do, and we do not perceive ourselves as a replacement to the school counselor, but really as a supplement to the school counselor's work. We also partner with sometimes coaches if it's a student going through the athletic recruitment process. We partner with acting coaches. There's a couple people in particular that are partners. And so that is just so valuable as you think about all the different parts of the college application and admissions process.
I love that. Especially, I hadn't even thought about partnering with coaches, but that makes a ton of sense, of course. I also love that the student is in the driver's seat. So let's go back to talking about that matching process
Mhm.
because we know that I think part of our success comes from having really strong relationships with students. And that match between coach and student is really one of the foundations to having a successful coaching relationship. Um, and when I do an intake, I get to have a 40-minute phone call with families, learn about what they're looking for, what's going on with their student, how long this has been going on, what are their students' strengths. Um, and so that matching process is really can be quite sort of involved. So I'd love to know sort of what goes into your matching process and how that happens.
Absolutely. And again, I think this is an area where we have a lot of similarities, and we talked about that when we first met. We too schedule a 40-minute initial consultation where we are asking the parents a lot of questions to learn about their student. We are also reviewing our particular approach, what we do, what we don't do, making sure that our approach is a good fit. Obviously, cost, which can sometimes be a factor for many families. But ultimately, if a family wants to consider moving forward, we are then really asking a lot of questions about their child, their learning style, what kinds of adults they have connected with best, what types of colleges they are looking for, liberal arts colleges, colleges on the West Coast focused on the UC system. So we can match them with the best counselor, both in terms of personality as well as in terms of niche expertise. Everyone on the team is highly experienced. The average is 20 years of experience. However, we all have different niche expertise based on the kinds of students we've worked with, the kinds of schools we've worked in, our particular interests and backgrounds. And so we want to make sure we match that student with the best fit counselor. At that moment, the student can either just begin working with the counselor that the family and we think is best. We send bios, and the parents and the person on the enrollment team helping this family make that decision. Or the family has the option to meet with the counselor that they think is best in a complimentary meeting. The student is present, make sure everybody agrees. Either way, we guarantee that fit. So if we got it wrong and it's not the right fit, we go back to the drawing board. That is really one of the benefits of working with a company like Premium Prep that is small and boutiquey, but big enough that there are other options should it, for whatever reason, not be the right fit.
That sounds lovely. And there's so much that goes into this matching process and the application process. Can you tell us how you use data in some of these processes?
Absolutely. I'm going to share some slides in a moment. Miranda has a colleague who's in the background who will put those up in a second. One of the first things, thank you, perfect, to mention is that we use a software called Maya Learning. It is a college platform that has more data than you could ever imagine for college list building, tracking all of the students' academic progress, testing progress. It is also the tool we use for oversight so that our senior team can review every counselor's process with every student and give feedback on the list to make sure that we feel these are really healthy, balanced lists with all the schools that make the most sense for that student. Having said that, there's a lot of very nuanced data that goes even beyond what is in the kind of platform I mentioned called Maya. One of the areas that we really spend a lot of time focusing on and helping educate families on is major. We want students, of course, to apply to the major they're most interested in, but a lot of students aren't really sure, and they can accidentally put themselves in a more competitive pool by mistake. So we want to make sure they're thoughtful and eyes wide open going into these decisions. So here are just a few examples of the UCs in particular where you can see what the overall admit rate is for UCLA and what the nursing admit rate is, 9 versus 1%. A contrast, UC San Diego, overall admit rate 25%, business 13%. So business, nursing, Pre-med, these can be many of the more competitive pathways. And then there are some that are not as competitive. And you can see with Berkeley where the arts and humanities, that percentage is a bit higher. Sarah, can we have the next slide, please? So here you can see some schools that are outside the UC system. This is not a UC specific issue. You can see at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, the overall admit rate is 42%, and then exploratory studies is higher than that for those students who want to explore, who aren't 100% sure what they want to study. Whereas the engineering school is 24%, so much lower admit rate. Looking at a school like Bucknell, because this doesn't just affect big public schools, you can
Mhm.
also see some differentiation. Psychology is a great example. That has become a very popular area of interest, and so tends to be a very competitive major. Cornell is very desegregated, so deans in the various colleges actually are the ones making most of the admissions decisions. So there can be quite a bit of variability. Obviously, that's a Ivy League school, highly selective, so you're seeing a lot of single-digit acceptance rates on there. But that is an important factor that we consider. Next slide, please. Another data point that's really important is understanding the early rounds and the regular rounds and how the acceptance rate can be different. We could spend a lot of time talking about this, but we just wanted to throw up a few examples to give you a sense of how dramatic the admit rate difference can be in early versus regular. So Tulane is quite dramatic. Vanderbilt, a very popular school right now, 13 versus 3%. I think the South in general is just very popular. Again, this is not just affecting a certain type of school or region. We've got Williams, which is one of our smaller NESCAC schools in New England, 26 versus 9%. So this is something we see pretty widely and help students to understand in the decisions that they make. Okay, next. Another factor is understanding in versus out of state admit rate. Sometimes it can be an advantage to be an in-state student, but sometimes it can be a disadvantage. This just varies a lot by school. Most schools are trying to really take care of their own students. And so the admit rate is typically higher in-state compared to out-of-state. Again, we're seeing this pretty much across the board. Tennessee is a great example, a school in the South that's become much more popular with out-of-state students. UT Austin is definitely a great example with 40 versus 5%. You see in San Diego, the out-of-state admit rate is actually higher. So it just really can vary and is an important data point. Next. So test scores is another big one. Obviously, the testing is a part of the process that can be really stressful, and most schools are still test optional, so that's a relief. But some schools still seem to admit at a much higher percentage for those students who have submitted test scores. So it's something to be aware of. It is not the case everywhere, but there are definitely schools where we see some favoritism or just for whatever reason, their process is biased towards students who submit. Obviously, these need to be students who are submitting strong scores. So this gets more complicated if you're interested in a school that tends to prefer test submitters and you're struggling with the testing. So navigating all of that, deciding, should I keep doing test prep? Should I abandon it and focus on other things? Those are all the complicated questions that we're helping families with, and often in conversation with folks like you, Miranda, because obviously the stress level, the priorities need to be under consideration. I think that's the last slide, so we can pull out of the slides for now. But yeah, those were just some of the key data points I wanted to talk about.
No, those are helpful and fascinating. I had no idea that some of the UC schools it was actually easy to get in from out of state. That is so counter to the household wisdom in California. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I know. California is, we could do a whole webinar just on California schools.
Oh, I'm sure. Um, so many of our students are neurodivergent, and so we work closely with them to make sure we're developing executive functioning skills and helping students really understand how they learn best. And sometimes our students are concerned about going off to school because they're concerned that they're not really going to get the support that they need um, to perform at their best. So, how do you sort of serve neurodivergent students in the college application process?
Yeah. We work with neurodivergent students all the time. That's an area where we have a lot of experience and comfort. We actually have some counselors on our team who work almost exclusively with students who are neurodivergent. That is their area of expertise. And then we also have counselors for whom that is an area of strength and interest. Obviously, the needs of neurodivergent students can vary quite a bit. So there's a lot of factors that go into that match beyond just if this is a counselor who works with neurodivergent students. But what we do with our neurodivergent students is kind of what we do with all students, but on steroids. So it's a lot of chunking and bite-sized pieces. This process is incredibly overwhelming, even for someone with very high executive functioning skills. It's just daunting. Um, we have a workbook that is for the pre-application phase. We have a workbook for the application phase to help students stay organized with trackers, with ways to lay out some of the more complicated parts like the activity section of their applications. With ways to stay organized about who, what, where with honors programs and merit scholarships, and even who does and doesn't require an interview or a video submission. There are so many moving parts of this process. It can definitely make your head spin. And I think the organizational piece itself is one of the reasons that working with a company like ours can be so valuable because it can create some tension in the home. There are parts of the process you're not aware of. Do colleges track interest? Well, some do. And so prioritizing how to show interest. Do I need to visit all 15 of these schools? Are there other ways to show interest? Do they all track interest?
Hmm.
Even down to the nitty gritty, like when we start talking about signing up on mailing lists, back in the day when we applied to college, you would literally get mail. So they still call them mailing lists. Um, Making sure you know what email address to submit so that mail doesn't just get lost in the shuffle. So for many students, it makes sense to start kind of a new grown up email account that is focused on the college process. So you're not missing email. That's important because colleges are still, by and large, communicating with students via email. There is a secondary phase once you become an applicant. So when you move from being a prospective student to an applicant, you have a portal. Colleges have you create a portal with your own distinct sign in. And so you need to be able to really be the person in charge of that and checking that. So we are constantly reminding students what to do, what to check for, because no one has access to that portal but the student. And so it just requires students to be hyper organized and focused. And for us to help them manage this process in small steps that are not so overwhelming. Because otherwise, I think the organizational aspect can just be daunting and kids can kind of shut down.
No, absolutely. That makes a ton of sense. That sounds really helpful. I think this would be daunting for a perfectly highly functioning adult, honestly.
You're right. You're right. Absolutely. I agree.
Um, so one of the questions I get asked by our high school students is what should they be asking when they're visiting a school? So what are they actually like, especially our neurodivergent students, if they're on a college visit, um, what should they be asking about? What should they make sure is available at that school for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think just like all students, neurodivergent students' needs are going to vary. So having that self-awareness, which I think when students work with you and your team, they have greater self-awareness of what their needs are. But knowing what factors are going to help them be most successful, starting to think about, well, what are the things that have helped me be most successful in high school? Is it a particular type of accommodation, like extended time or a separate space for testing? Is it access to audiobooks? Is it meeting regularly with an executive functioning coach? Is it extra writing support from a writing specialist or a writing coach, and making sure that you know which schools are going to have those kinds of resources and be accommodating. I think there are certain universal features that most neurodivergent students need. I think some smaller class sizes can be helpful for most. I think easy access to professors is really valuable, and easy access to the accommodations. So when you visit these college campuses, meet with the Office of Disability Services, schedule that in advance so you can meet with someone and fill them out. See if you're kind of on the same page. Take note of the location. Is it somewhere convenient where you're going to have easy access? Is it tucked away and decentralized? And does it not feel a central part of the community? And just do your homework, make sure you talk to students who are using those services. How helpful are they? How approachable and accommodating or resistant are the professors? How good is the coordination between that office and um, the faculty? Because there sometimes are tensions there.
Mhm.
So I think all of those things are very important. Most students we work with are in more mainstream schools and getting some of these accommodations. There are also structured support programs that are fee-based, where there is an extra fee involved, where you are getting more assurance of added support. So regular meetings with a learning specialist or academic coach, um, help with longer term assignments, all kinds of things. So some of our favorites are Syracuse, Marist, American, Northeastern, and partly because those schools tend to check a lot of the boxes that many of our students are looking for in terms of some of them are D1 sports, and that's important in terms of that school spirit piece, a place like Syracuse. McDaniel is a hidden gem that we love that has great support services. So just knowing how to do the homework, making sure you're working with a counselor who has that experience, that specialization, and knowing how to ask the right questions when you are researching and visiting these campuses.
That was incredibly helpful. You were just a wealth of information.
Good, I'm so glad.
I mean, I know you've been doing this for a long time, but you really
Yeah,
do. Like,
yeah, yeah.
so all of our students are thinking about college, by the time they get into ninth grade, it's already, you know, simmering on the back burner. Some of them it's simmering on the front burner. Um, and so we constantly have this eye on the long term. Families are constantly trying to optimize like how students spend their time and what they're doing in high school to make sure they get in. Um, can you just tell us sort of what families should or shouldn't be doing, what mistakes come up sometimes when they're
Absolutely.
thinking about this
Yes.
application process?
Yes, absolutely. I'd say this is a really good question, and I'm so glad you asked it. And I'd say one thing that I understand as a parent is that even when parents are making mistakes, it's with the best of intentions, right? And so we're not interested in scolding. We understand that we love our kids and we're just trying to help them. And some of the hovering and helicoptering, I'm a parent. I have two kids in college, very different learning styles. So I really do understand what parents are kind of going through in this process. I think one of the things that can be most problematic is being over involved and kind of taking over. I think that can make students feel like you don't have confidence that they can do it themselves. And remember, they are getting ready to be young adults living more independently. And so We want to make sure they know that we believe in them and we think that they can do this. And if we send them signals that we think they can't, that can be detrimental to their mental health, to their confidence, and it can be frustrating for them. Having said that, I do think there's areas that parents can help, and understanding your child and that dynamic is so important. Like my second child really wanted me to be involved in the essay process and take a look at things and give feedback. My older child really wanted me to be out of it. He didn't want me to be in meetings with his college counselor. He wanted that space. He was like, I've got this. And so I needed to respect that and kind of read the room. So knowing who your child is. Most of our parents want to see essays at various junctures. They want to give opinions. I think that's fine. Like, you know your child better than we do. You've obviously been with them a lot longer than we have, and parents can have valuable input. Again, getting in there and redlining and spending too much time with the essay and not letting them work with their team, can send the wrong message. Parents can be really helpful with some of the organizational pieces. I love parents to help with planning college visits. There's no reason parents can't get on there and schedule those campus visits. If there is any direct communication with someone on a college campus, it could be the Learning Support Services office, it could be a coach, it could be an admissions counselor, it could be a professor. That must come from the student. That is really inappropriate and signals immaturity if a parent is the one with any of that direct communication. But scheduling the campus visits and information sessions, by all means, parents understand the family calendar, booking flights. I think that's a very appropriate step, for parents to be involved. Um, I would say for some of our neurodivergent students, often those who are not also working with an executive functioning coach and the parents playing a little bit more of that role, we do find they need to be present in some more of the organizational conversations to help with the student's homework between meetings, to help make sure that the student understands the expectations and is plodding along and getting it done. And so we are flexible when we understand that different students have different needs, and sometimes parents do need, to be a bit more involved. I'd say the other thing is not to bring your bias about specific colleges to the table. And this is my last slide, Sarah, if you don't mind putting it up for a moment. Um, Colleges have just changed a lot over time. And so our perception of what is a good college or a likely or a selective college or a safety, that's kind of the word from our day, is probably pretty different um, from what we recall. So just looking, and this is not even going back as far as when we applied, this is just like a 10, 11-year spread. But just look at how these admit rates have dropped. And again, if we did this back from 20, 25 years ago, it would be much more dramatic. I'm definitely showing my age a little bit there. But NYU is now 8%. It was 30%. Tulane is a great example of a school that's become much more selective. Obviously, they really heavily lean on that early decision, which impacts that overall admit rate, but 27 to 12%. So just doing your best to really keep an open mind. I cringe when a parent says, oh my gosh, blank school, and they put it down because schools have changed so much from our day. And it's just important to try and keep an open mind, because as much, and Sarah, you can put it back on full screen. Thank you. As much as parents, as kids act like they don't care what their parents think, you can actually take the slide down, Sarah. Sorry about that.
I care.
Yeah, there we go. They care. They care. Kids, they want to make their parents proud and happy. And if they feel that they're disappointing you, it impacts them. And so they might act like they absolutely have no regard for your opinion. In fact, they might completely reject a school just because you've suggested it. But the truth is, they want to please us. And so it's really important in this process that you show support and encouragement and not judgment. And I guess my last piece of advice for parents is, not to make college like an everyday part of the conversation. I would not talk about college like every single night at dinner. It just begins to wear on these kids. They need little breaks from it.
That makes a ton of sense. It's incredibly helpful. Can I ask you a question that we didn't have on our initial list?
Of course, anything. Yeah.
Um, so in my experience, the anxiety level around kids getting into schools is so high amongst parents and kids that it just takes a toll, I think, on everybody. And I'm sure you see this coming in too. So I think what you just said is incredibly helpful and useful. But is there anything else you would say just around handling like sort of the feeling that there might not be a place for their child or their child just not going to get in or they have to just continually do more,
Yeah.
even if it's not necessarily like in the best interest of or something the child is not interested in?
Yeah. I think one of the things that is good to remember is we have so many colleges in this country. Like there is a college for everyone. If you want to go to college, there is a college for you. If you are all obsessed, which we tend to do in our society, with like the same 25 or 50 schools, and I know a lot of my examples probably were some of those names, but I tried to sprinkle in a healthy range of schools. Um, you will find a place. So keeping that open mind is so important. I'd say a practical piece of advice is if you have the financial flexibility to apply early decision, do it. It can really help you gain that advantage, but don't pick the biggest reach on the list because you have an advantage. Pick what we call an in-range appropriate reach school because your chances are then so much greater of getting in, and then there's a really good chance your student will be done early with this process and able to breathe, relax, enjoy their senior year. You as parents can relax a little bit. A very high percentage of our students apply early decision, and we have a lot of conversations around those choices, the risks, the rewards. There's lots of ways to go about it. We do not ever insist or dictate a student's choice. We just help them understand the risk rewards. I think having an ED2 plan, understanding that some schools offer a second round of early and thinking about that even before you file your ED1 school so it doesn't become a panic. Oh boy, it's Christmas and we are now trying to figure out the rest of the list. No, you need to know exactly what your plan is if you get deferred or denied. So there isn't that panic because you will be deflated if you do not get into your ED1 school.
Mm,
It's normal. Who wouldn't?
totally. That's incredibly helpful. Okay, I'm gonna shift gears a little bit and talk so we can focus on feeling comfortable on campus.
Mhm.
So once you get there, you need to then be able to, enjoy your time and feel like you can be yourself when you're there. So how do you help students who are Jewish or Muslim or Palestinian or any other minority sort of find a school where they're going to feel comfortable?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And it comes up a lot. We work with a very diverse population of students. I myself am Jewish. So I think for that reason, we do have a lot of Jewish families who reach out for our services. And obviously, this is a really complicated time for all students, Jewish, Muslim, you name it. Similar to the way we talked about approaching the research on colleges for neurodivergent students, I think you take a similar approach. You really need to do your homework and your research. There is a wealth of information about anti-Semitism on campuses, about campus climate, no matter kind of what side or what you're looking for. So knowing those resources is important, paying attention to them. And just like if you were doing a research paper, you would not rely on one source of information, but make sure you are using multiple sources and really do your own research on the school. Like you can subscribe to the student newspaper and get a sense of the political climate and how the administration is responding, what the student body is like, the university publications, so not the student written publications, but how is the university itself presenting itself on these topics? Social media. whether you're following the Muslim Student Association or the Hillel or the Chabad. Those are great ways to see kind of what's going on those campuses for those students. Um, Certainly, it's important to understand if you're following the climate in the media, understanding any bias that that media might be coming from, so that you know what their lens is. I think talking to students and parents, if you know them, we keep a pretty extensive ambassador list. So if someone's visiting a campus where they don't know students, we provide that information. And then just getting on the ground and seeing for yourself. You can make appointments with different organizations when you visit campus. You can have a Friday night Shabbat dinner at Hillel on most campuses. And then also hearing what they have to say in admissions about these questions, right? Because seeing how poised they are, how comfortable they are talking about these topics, what is it they are saying about campus climate? So really doing a full circle research to get the full 360 perspective on what is happening on these campuses. I think is the best way to explore and make sure that it's a place that you think you'll be comfortable. If you are more interested in just knowing what is the population like, are there other kids who look like me and eat like me? There are lots of ways to get that information as well, and tons of resources out there. We were recently working with a Hindu student who had some pretty specific dietary needs and helped her with that research just to make sure like there was enough vegetarian options and sometimes vegan or no egg, like all the specifications that that a student might need that are just really important to them. Or sometimes it's even something I'm getting off topic here, but like allergies and how the college can handle those food allergies that a student might have.
No, that makes it's incredibly important. You have to be able to eat when you get there.
Yeah, that's
It's
important. And
basic.
as moms, we're like, oh my gosh, our children have to eat. Like it's just so
Totally.
important that I always seem to talk about food. I don't know why, but it's like, are you eating?
Okay, so this is the last question I have. So we know that anti-Semitism on campus is a big issue. It's been in the news. Um, is there anything in addition you would say to help Jewish students find a school where they feel comfortable? And how might you help counsel those families to feel comfortable as well?
Yeah. I would say Hillel is really a very good resource. They always do their top 60 colleges by Jewish population. So that's a great starting point. They have a whole section now since October 7th on anti-Semitism on college campuses. There's also the ADL report card, where they have given colleges a grade, like Elon and WashU really stood out very positively. There were other schools that were more negative. Chabad has really grown on college campuses. That can be a great resource for families. Tribe Talk is another great site to learn anything and everything you could ever want to know about the Jewish community and the climate on a campus. Um, some people like following Facebook groups or social media groups like MOT Parenting. Obviously, that can be overwhelming, so may not be for everyone. But just another resource. But we are constantly educating our counselors about this information, making sure to be up to date, to talk to our families. I was on a panel that this year at the Atlanta Jewish Federation where we were really homing in on these topics. So it's definitely something on people's minds, and you want to make sure that you are knowing how to get the research or working with a counselor who can help you with that, because it's definitely one of the more common questions we're getting these days.
Fascinating. Okay, well, this is incredibly helpful. I feel like I've learned so much from you. And I don't even have a child applying to college right now.
Well, you'll be ready if you have a young child, and I hope it's been helpful for your audience. We're here, we're a resource. We love partnering with you, Miranda, and your team. And I'm just really grateful to have had this opportunity. Happy to answer other questions that folks have, and just be a resource for your families.
Thank you so much. We'll definitely be in touch. We really appreciate partnering with you, and I think that all of our families could probably learn a ton from you, and we'll be in touch in the future. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.